Okay guys, so this week we are doing egg basics, and let's go ahead and unpack what we got in our bag. So we have some onion, we have our greens for our salad, we have our eggs, we're gonna have 2 containers of vinegar. Here's our other one. Some sugar, some oil, garlic, some butter, some Dijon mustard, some apples, a potato, some cabbage, and our all-purpose seasoning with our salt, pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder. Alrighty, so when we think about equipment that we're going to need today, you're going to want to have a non-stick if you can. If not, that's totally fine. But an oven-safe pan. So the handle is metal as well, and we're going to need that so that it doesn't melt in the oven, right? So any kind of pan that has the metal handle so that it's completely oven safe. And we're going to go ahead and preheat our oven to 325 degrees. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and start prepping our veg. So when you make a frittata, it's all going to be made in one pan. So we're going to go ahead and prep our cabbage, our onion, and our potato, because we're going to cook those first. So let's go ahead and peel our potato. And I'm only making enough for, again, I'm gonna do the full recipe, so it's gonna be for 4 people. But you really don't need all this potato, so I'm actually gonna leave most of it peeled, and I'm only gonna use this much. So go ahead and, like we talked about last week, that potatoes are gonna keep better in water. So I'm gonna put my potato in a Ziploc baggie and fill it up with water so that it stays nice and fresh. So that's what I'm doing off camera. And this way you can use this later on in the week for anything. If you want to make you some fried potatoes to go with your breakfast, and use the same techniques that we did last week for fried potatoes, you can certainly do that. So there's our potato. I'm going to go ahead and stick it in the fridge. If we clean up as we go, then we are going to save ourselves a lot of work at the end. So I've rinsed our potato. We throw our scraps away. And what we want to do for our potato this week is slice it really thin. So there is a dish called a Spanish tortilla, and this is Spanish where we think of like Spain Spanish, and it is made where you slice your potatoes really thin, and then you pour egg and cheese over it, and you cook it all in the pan together, and then you let it crisp up on all sides, and then it's pretty much done. So as you can see, our potato started to have like a little bit of a bad place in it. That happens. So we're just going to trim that off and still utilize what we can. So I'm going to take these pieces and slice them thin. And the thinner that we cut it, the quicker the cooking time, which which is what we want. We want our potatoes to be cooked through by the time our frittata is finished. So we're kind of doing a take on the Spanish tortilla today, but we're going to be adding onion and cabbage. So we're kind of making it more Central European with adding the cabbage and onion for those very familiar flavors that are oh so yummy. So we're going to discard this. And we're going to hold our potato in water just like we did last week so that it doesn't brown before we're ready to cook it. So today we are talking about egg basics, but we're also going to be doing an intro to our salad dressings. I kind of paired these meals so that we could do one type of salad dressing this week and another type of salad dressing next week. So this week we're going to be doing a vinaigrette, and with our cabbage we're going to peel off that outer leaf like normal leaf, and then we're actually going to cut the core out. If you have a piece that has a pretty large core like that, we want that gone. That's going to be super bitter. And I'm only going to use like part of the cabbage because again I've got a pretty small pan over there, so we don't want to fill it up too much. And we're going to do the same thing that we did last week, where you can either shave it with a peeler or cut it really thin with your knife. And I'm going to do the peeler because this is going to help us get it super thin and it's going to get nice and crispy and golden. Just be careful, make sure that you're not going to peel your fingers. And when you get down to a place where you don't feel comfortable anymore, go ahead and finish the rest up with your knife. And we're just cutting. It's not going to be as beautifully thin, but we're going to try and make it that way. But there are two types of vinaigrettes or salad dressings, and there's a vinaigrette, which is our oil and vinegar based, and then there is the more like mayonnaise based dressing, or the cold hollandaise, right? We talked about that with mother sauces, where the warm hollandaise is warm, whereas mayonnaise is more of like a cold hollandaise. So we're going to be making mayonnaise from scratch next week, which is going to be super fun. Okay, we'll go ahead and put that in a dish as well. But salad dressings are all about emulsification. So emulsification is the combining of two liquids that don't like to go together. So think oil and water, oil and vinegar, stuff like that. And the way that we emulsify them or make them homogeneous is through an emulsification agent. And we're going to talk about those today whenever we make our salad dressing. But the last thing we want to do is we're going to julienne our onion. So we're going to peel off this outer layer of our onion. And I'm going to give this a little trim just to get the brown part off that was starting to turn into the skin. And then we can actually cut off our butt for this part. Normally we don't because it holds it together. But then we're going to go like this and go all the way around our onion, making thin slices like that. Ta-da! Super quick. And we can go ahead and just put that with our cabbage. We're going to put those in the pan at the same time. Okay, so we're going to put away product that we're not going to use. We're going to clean off our cutting board. And We're going to transition into our next steps. Let's go ahead and transition over to the stove because we're going to start our frittata. Alrighty, so our pan is cold. We do not have our eye on, but we do have our oven on. So if you forgot to turn your oven on at the beginning, make sure to go ahead and turn it on now, again at 325. So we are going to turn our pan on to medium-low heat, and that's about a 4, okay? And we're gonna let our pan get nice and evenly warm. This is very important for making a frittata because if we get our pan too hot, then we're not gonna have our egg cooked all the way through and it'd be nice and fluffy. It's going to be like airy and have that weird like cafeteria school scrambled egg texture instead of nice and fluffy and silky and smooth, which is the texture that we're going for. So we're gonna let this heat up, and we're also gonna go ahead and put our butter in the pan because we want our butter to melt and get nice and frothy. So, come on. Go ahead and just scoop that out. I know this looks like a lot of butter, but we're gonna need to cook our potatoes in this, and we're gonna need to cook our cabbage and onion in this, and we want it to be left in the pan to kind of grease our pan for the eggs. So we're gonna let that melt down while our pan is evenly heating, and we're gonna go ahead and mix up our eggs. So, and I'm gonna scoot us back a little bit so that you can see this. In a bowl, you're gonna go ahead and crack all of your eggs. Oh, and you also should have gotten milk in your bag. I had some at home, so I didn't bring it with me from making the mailboxes. So you want to make sure you're cracking on a flat surface. This is gonna help make sure that there aren't any shells. So the perfect ratio to have the nice fluffy texture is to have 4 eggs to 1.5 cups of milk. So I kind of eyeballed that out for you guys, but I'm going to show you what I do and what we're going to do to kind of cheat that a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and whisk up with a fork our eggs. We're going to pop the yolks, and then we're going to kind of tilt our bowl and whisk it like this. And this is going to help incorporate air, which is also going to help give us that airy, fluffy texture. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add our liquid. I'm using heavy whipping cream, so I'm actually going to dilute mine with water. So we're going to add a 1/2 cup of heavy cream and mix this in. I did not get a big enough bowl, y'all. We're going to have to make this work. And then I'm going to add another 2 of these, because it's 1/2 cup of water. If I can. So we just barely made that work. So we're just kind of stir this around like this and try not to slosh it out of my bowl because I didn't get a big enough bowl. So make sure you have a big enough bowl. Okay, so that's all homogeneous. You want to make sure that it's not like super stringy. You want it to all kind of be one continuous liquid so you don't see any clumpies of anything. Okay, so we're gonna set that aside and let it hang out until we're ready to pour it in our pan. So I'm gonna scoot it back here and bring you guys forward because our butter's melted. Look at that, gorgeous. So let's go ahead, while we're at this stage and you guys can see super clearly, let's talk about clarified butter. So, see all the white stuff in the pan? That is our whey, or our milk solids, or milk proteins. If you guys have ever heard of browned butter happens whenever those white milk proteins, or our whey, brown, and then we have brown butter. It's pretty simple, but our milk proteins are browning, and that makes brown butter. Now, if you want to make clarified butter, what you would do is scoop out the milk proteins. So the proteins actually settle to the top, so you can skim them off, and then that will leave clear or clarified butter at the bottom. But we're gonna leave our milk proteins in. No biggie. Okay, so just like last week, we're gonna drain our potatoes super well. And we're gonna add them to the pan. And we want these to make an even layer, so you can kind of move them around. Be careful not to burn your fingers. And we're gonna leave them alone. We're actually just gonna let this chill for quite a while. So we're gonna switch it back over to our prep station, and we're gonna make our dressing. Let me get a big enough bowl. Okay, so we're back over here. For this, you're going to need, we're gonna use a fork to whisk, because sometimes forks actually are better at whisking than actual whisks, especially depending on the size bowl. And we're not making a lot of dressing, so we really don't need to use a full-on whisk. Sometimes it'll keep it from incorporating the way that we want to. But before we start mixing things up, we have some more prep that we're gonna do. We are going to smash and make garlic paste. So we're gonna cut off the butts of our garlic. We don't want butts in our food. And then we're going to smash our garlic until it's flat like that. I mean, we really want to smash it. Don't be scared. You're smashing on the flat of the knife, so there's like, unless you tilt it up like that, there's no way you're gonna cut yourself. So actually tilt the blade down and then smash, okay? We can smash that one again. So now we're gonna pulverize our garlic with the knife. We don't want big chunks. We want it to be nice and smooth, like a paste. So we're gonna chop, 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 chop. Scrape it off your knife and continue to chop, chop. Again. And so why does the garlic stick to the knife? That's because it has a super high sugar content. That's why it burns super quickly in the pan. And yes, garlic is bitter and it's kind of spicy too, but whenever we caramelize and have that Maillard reaction and bring out those sugars, then it is sweet like candy. So that's why garlic is super sticky. So we're actually gonna kind of like use the edge of our knife like this to help turn this into a garlic paste once we have smushed it enough or chopped it enough. And so I'm using like a rocking motion to smush it against the blade and then drag it back. So now we have garlic paste. Yay! So we're gonna go ahead and put this into our salad dressing bowl. And this is gonna give us a nice garlicky flavor without being too overwhelming and without having just chunks of garlic. The other technique we're gonna use with this to mellow out the flavor of the garlic is called blooming. What that means is you're gonna add acid to your bitter ingredients or strong ingredients to mellow them out. So we're gonna go ahead and add our vinegar. We're gonna kind of whisk that up and we're gonna let it simmer, not simmer, you know, but just chill out for a little bit. Okay, so we talked about emulsifying agent. If you guys could guess, what would you think our emulsifying agent is for our salad dressing? If we're gonna be using some sugar, some Dijon, our oil, our seasoning mix, and that's pretty much it. So if we know that the oil and vinegar don't go together, what about which one of these three ingredients is going to help them homogenize? I'm gonna pause for answers. If you guessed Dijon mustard, then you are correct. So mustard is a homogenizing agent or an emulsifying agent. Another emulsifying agent could be honey. So if you wanted to doubly keep your dressing all homogeneous and in one continuous form, then instead of sugar, you can use honey as your sweetening agent in your dressing. Also, a emulsifying agent is egg yolk. So next week, whenever we make a mayonnaise, we're gonna see how the egg yolk emulsifies our dressing. It's almost like magic. It's super cool. Okay, so we're gonna add our Dijon mustard and we're going to mix this up. And basically whenever you make a dressing, you want to mix everything, all of your ingredients together except for your oil. Our oil is the last thing that we're going to add. So we're going to add all of our Dijon. We're going to add like half of our sugar. And we're also going to add just like a couple of pinches of our seasoning mix. And the important thing here is that we taste it and we make sure that we like it. So we're gonna whisk this to get our sugar to dissolve. You can hear it on the bottom of the dish. So once you stop hearing that and feeling the grittiness, you know it's dissolved. Okay, now we're going to taste it, see if we like it. I think we need to add a little bit more of both. So we're going to add a teeny more sugar and a teeny more of our seasoning mix. We're going to whisk it again. Whisk, whisk, whisk. Now right now what we're really checking for is just saltiness, our acid, and our sweetness all being balanced, because our oil is going to mellow it out a lot. So you want to make sure that you like how this tastes before you add the oil, because the oil is going to kind of bring everything down. And so if you're worried about the acid and you think that it's too sour, don't worry about it. The oil is going to mellow that completely. Okay, try it again. Yum. Okay, so our next step is that we are going to slowly drizzle our oil in while we're whisking. I mean, like slowly. You want barely a drizzle. And you want to whisk, 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 whisk. And you want to keep doing that. Drizzle a little bit in and then whisk, 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 whisk. this is where, if you really want this to be homogeneous, you would do it in a blender, or you would use a little whisker, which I may here in a minute. I'm going to show you guys. Because what you're doing is you're wanting to break down the oil molecules into small enough pieces so that they become suspended in our liquid. So you want to make sure you kind of break it up as it's going into your dressing. Okay, I'm going to pause with this and I'm going to get my little whisker and see if I can help this out. So I have this tiny little whisk that's battery powered. I'm going to see if this is going to help. I'm actually going to turn this a little bit. There we go. Yeah, this is working a whole lot better. So if you have a blender and you want to do this in a blender, that's a really good idea. And do the same thing, where you dump all of your other liquids in first, and then you slowly add your oil. Oops, I'm spraying this everywhere. Ah! Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of the oil. And I'm going to tilt it back on the side and incorporate it. But you can do this with a fork too, or you just have to work at it a little bit longer. So you can use this technique for any kind of oil and vinegar based salad dressing. So if you want to use white vinegar or red wine vinegar instead, you can. If you want to use let's see, if you want to use champagne vinegar, balsamic vinegar, anything like that, you can. And then you just add different seasonings based on what you want. And if you don't want to add a mustard to it, you can add your honey like we talked about it, or you can add an egg yolk, and that will help it as well. So we're going to taste it. Super yummo. So there's our dressing. We're going to let that chill out and we're going to go back to our potatoes. Okay. Our potatoes are nice and crispy. See? So we're actually going to use some tongs and pull these out and kind of let the butter go back. Let it drip back into the pan. And we're going to add our onions and our cabbage, because we want this to be a pretty layered frittata. And we're going to have the purple cabbage on the bottom, and then our potatoes on the top, and then we're going to pour our egg mixture. Well, really when we flip it out, it's going to be purple on the top and then potatoes on the bottom. Uh-oh, one dropped. There we go. So we still have our butter in the pan, plenty of butter in the pan, and we're going to go ahead and add our cabbage and onions as well. And I have not changed the heat. And we're actually gonna like kind of smush our cabbage into the pan, like that. And you can use that with a spatula if you don't feel comfortable doing that with your hands. So we're gonna take this time while this is cooking, we're gonna leave it alone, just like we did last week with our cabbage, because we want it to brown, and we're gonna clean up a little bit. So go and clean up whatever you can, and we'll be back in just a second. Okay, I cleaned up as much as I can, and while we're waiting on our cabbage to finish, we're gonna go ahead and cut our apple. We're gonna take our stem off, and we're gonna make sure that we wash our apple really well, because we're gonna leave the skin on for this one, and we're going to also wash our knife or get a new knife so that our apple doesn't taste directly like garlic. Okay, so we're gonna slice down in a square around our core like we've done before, and then we're going to make little matchsticks. So we're actually gonna cut down like this. We're going to turn it back, and then we're going to make little matchsticks like this. And these are called a baton, and we're actually probably, let's go ahead and cut these down one more size. So they're pretty thin like that. We're going to go ahead and put these in our dressing. And this is going to kind of marinate these apples, and they're going to be super yummy whenever we go to eat our salad. And then we're gonna slice across on the top and put those into our dressing. And this is also gonna help keep them from turning brown. So just like with the last one, we'll go ahead and cut this down one more time. So we have 2 slices, and we'll just go across. So this can be considered, this is called the baton cut, and it's bigger than julienne. Julienne is very, very thin. So we're doing the baton, which is smaller than a French fry or a McDonald's French fry, but still bigger than a julienne. So with this one, where we don't really have a nice flat, we're actually going to cut it in half so that we create a flat for ourselves, so that we're not going to be accidentally cutting ourselves. So if you don't have a flat, create one, because safety is more important than efficiency. Because there's nothing less efficient than cutting your finger and not being able to do your job. And there are always accidents, but if you go into the restaurant industry and you cut yourself all the time, your bosses are going to get irritated. So, proficiency over efficiency. Okay. So we have our apples in our dressing. We're just going to kind of push them down again to create that liquid barrier between the apples and the oxygen so that they don't brown. Okay, let's go check on our cabbage. First of all, this smells absolutely amazing. Okay, so we're gonna flip this. And to help with browning, we're not going to turn up the heat, we're going to season. So we're going to take our salt, pepper, and garlic and onion powder mixture, and we're going to season pretty heavily. We're going to use all of it because, one, we're seasoning our eggs with this, and we're also seasoning our potatoes, and potatoes take a lot of salt. Okay, so we can season heavily with this. And we're going to let it continue cooking. Okay. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna add our potatoes back. They're not really hot anymore, so we're just gonna layer them over our cabbage like this. We can take our big pieces and spread them out. And then so we have an even layer. And any butter that's left in here, just pour it back into the pan. And now we're going to add our egg mix. So we're going to just kind of pour this over everything. Let's whisk a little bit more the bottom, make sure that nothing's settled. Now that I've poured out some of the room, okay, so our trick with this is we're gonna do a little shake. So give it a little swirl, a little shake, and we wanna make sure that the egg has made contact with the bottom of the pan. You can also do a little shimmy shimmy in here. And we are going to put a lid on this. I don't know if I have a lid for that pan, but I have a big lid, so I'm gonna put a lid on this. And we're gonna let this chill out in the pan for about 5 minutes. So I'll see you back in 5 minutes. Okay guys, it has been 5 minutes. So what we want to look for with our frittata is that it's still jiggly, but the outsides are completely set. So you see how the middle jiggles, but the edges are set? So now what we're going to do is we're going to pop it in the oven for 15 to 20 minutes. We'll check back in 15 and see how it's doing, and then if it's not done, we'll give it another 5, okay? So again, your oven should be on 325, and I will see you in 15 minutes. Clean up, right? Okay. Okay guys, I hope you cleaned up while we had that 15-minute cook period. But I just want to say that this smells amazing, and also 15 minutes was the perfect amount of time. So this is what your frittata should look like when it's done. Completely set, you know, no wiggle, fully solid. And remember to grab the handle with a, I always want to call these hot pockets, pot holders, because, you know, we've just put that whole pan in the oven, so they're going to be hot. So, now it is time for plating. We're going to be using kind of like a sandwich plate, so smaller than this. And with our apples and our dressing, what we're going to do is go ahead and add our greens in there and just give it a quick toss. So add all your greens, mix it up, make sure they're nice and evenly coated. I know the recipe said cheese, and I had ordered cheese to go with our salad, but it did not make it onto the truck. So we did not get our cheese, they did not deliver it. So I apologize for that. But we were gonna branch out into some blue cheese for this week. So we want our salad to be nice and evenly coated like that. So there are 2 ways that we can take care of this frittata. And I'm gonna demonstrate both. So one way is to take a butter knife and to score it. You wanna go around the edges, being to actually use to offset spatula. So we're gonna go around the edge and ow, I touched the handle. I told you guys not to do that, and then I did it. We're gonna kind of pull it away from the edge and get it all unstuck so that we can run it along like that. Okay, so you can cut it like this, trying not to scratch your pan, and scoop out one piece like this. Okay. Or you can take it and flip it over onto your cutting board, a clean cutting board, and serve it like this, and you can serve it upside down. So there are two ways that you can do this, and if you cooked your frittata long enough, it will come out just like that. Okay, so with our plating, we're going to take our salad, and we can use our hands too, and we're gonna plate like half on top like this for a nice lovely dish like that, and we'd serve it like this, with this facing the person. So enjoy, guys.